This episode from the life of ML will be transmitted to our men and women overseas by shortwave and through the worldwide facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Petri Wine brings you
ML Elric and the soul of Detroit.
You acid around your Detroit around my suit. It's gone.
What are you doing? Come on.
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now, Albert?
Hey kids, it's your old pal, ML Elric, back with Mark Fellhauer while Shawn Windsor is in New Jersey, I think trying to solve the Hoffa case. Isn't that what he said?
I don't know. He's
eating pizza, I know that.
He acts miserable that he has to be on the road, but I think he secretly likes it because the Lions are back, so that's good.
Yeah, so Shawn will not be joining us this week, so it's safe for everybody else to keep listening.
Yeah, exactly.
But we do have a couple of very special guests. My former colleague, and now I think a competitor in the investigative journalism business, Steve Neveling of the Metro Times, is here to talk about a epic investigation he just completed. And we're very pleased that one of the principals in that investigation, Mark Craighead, is here, because the whole investigation is about how Mark Craighead was supposed to be somewhere else for like the rest of his natural life, because a Detroit police homicide detective known as the Closer somehow, through coercive tactics, was able to convince him to sign a confession to something he didn't do, which sent him away to prison. He is now free, along with several other people who got stitched up by this retired Detroit police investigator, some of whom have sued the city, some of whom have collected $16 million, and some of whom are wondering who is it that really was responsible for these cases, because oftentimes when the wrong man or woman goes to prison, the right person remains free. And while these cases, not often enough, get cleared up with an exoneration, I think it's exceedingly rare for the people who put the wrong person behind bars to say, now let's go get the right person. So Steve and Mark are going to talk about this complete and utter injustice after we thank some of the people who make the rest of the show possible, like Dr. Yaldo, who will help you see 20/20, certainly help you see clearer than the police and prosecutor when they have somebody in their sights. You can have better than 20/20 vision with LASIK surgery and with some of the other procedures that Dr. Yaldo is an expert at that will help you, well, get rid of the glasses, the contacts, all those things that really are archaic helpers, boosters that you don't need anymore. We'll tell you how Dr. Yaldo can help you a little later. Luke Nowacki will help you plan for a secure financial future. If you have been watching the markets lately, you are probably terrified. Don't do that. Let Luke keep an eye on things, because he'll help you come up with a plan so that you can rest easy, and when it's time to retire, hopefully you can live easy. Caju Cafe, our longtime sponsor, is back. We are proud to have them as a sponsor of our show. It's a great place for good food, great music. I was just there Saturday night. To those of you who came out to see me and the Smiths United, I mean, it wasn't a double bill. I just happened.
No, why are you included in that?
Well, it's sort of like Puppet Show and Spinal Tap. I was a puppet show. So it was great to see you. It was a great time. And if you've ever been to the Caju Cafe on a summer evening, sitting out on the beer garden or grabbing a brew at the garage bar, you don't need me to tell you anything else about what's going on there. But for the rest of you, find out what's coming up at the Caju Cafe a little later on in the show. If you want to break a sweat, come play Detroit. Great place to play sports. Belle Isle, Detroit City Fieldhouse, all kinds of places. They play every sport, and they'll find a way to get you in the game as an individual, as a group, or as a full team. We'll tell you how to save a little bit of money on your registration later on. And the Michigan Peddler, you can save $40 on a ride for you and more than a dozen of your friends, checking out the cool sites in Detroit on Detroit's premier pedal pub. That's the Michigan Peddler. We'll tell you how to save $40 when you book your ride using our exclusive promo code a little later on. And of course, we have some new members of the Soul Patrol, people who have signed up to support this show on Patreon. You are the reason we're here, and it's great to have your support. So thank you very much. You can go to our website, mlsoulofdetroit.com, to hit the link for Patreon. It's a great way to keep us coming back every week. And it gets you some pretty cool benefits, which we will talk about, and this is going to sound redundant, a little later in the show. So stick around.
That's a lot. All right.
That's a lot. Yeah, no, it's good. Things are looking up, and things are looking up too for Mr. Craighead because he was able to come here. He's not joining us via collect call, which is what he would have done if he was still incarcerated for a crime he didn't commit, a crime that took the life of one of his friends. Mark, what's it like when you lose a friend and then the cops come and say, you did it?
Well, it's terrifying. Like you said, me and Cole were real good friends. And to have the police come back and say that I was the murderer, it was terrifying. Never been through anything like that in my life, you know.
And this dragged out over a number of years, I understand. They came to you early on,
right?
Said you're okay, and at some point,
cleared twice, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I took 2 statements, and the police said, the detective said it was good statements. They were consistent. Then they had some fresh eyes looking at the case, and with 25 statements, he came to me first and last because they closed the show on me last.
So what was it that was different the first couple times they talked to you and said, hey, everything looks good? The third time they talked to you, they weren't quite as pleased with what they heard from you.
Yeah, the first 2, they were consistent. I mean, if you read both of them, they were consistent. The third one, I had two detectives come to my house, and I was on my porch, and they denied me access back in my house. I was working at Chrysler, just got off of work, came home. Well, I went to the football field first because I was coaching Little League football, and we had a beauty shop, so I went to check the beauty shop too. Came home, there was 2 men on the porch. So I tried to get into the house. First of all, I asked them, can I help you? They said, yeah, we're here to talk to you about the death of Cole Pruitt. And I told them, I want to come down the next day because I was dirty, hungry, just got off of work, went to the football field. I told them all that. And they wouldn't let me. One guy was Fisher, Investigator Fisher. He stepped in front of the door while Jackson was on the porch supporting him. So they denied me access in the house. The good thing about that, ML, is that I had a guy that was in the house and I was with my brother. So it was 2 other people with me that saw what they were doing, that saw the aggressiveness of both officers and knew that they were in for something.
And well, the story is too that they told you that they were going to send a squad car just to come and arrest you. And that is, I believe there's a little bit of differencing there as to, no, we never said that to him. But thankfully, like you said, your brother and your friend were there to say, yeah, that they were kind of threatening him. Was there still part of you that was like, no, you know what, I'll see if they're going to do this, if they're really going to bring in this squad car? Or were you just that affable, like, oh, okay, I'll go. I've been cleared twice.
No, I would. Well, my attorney brought that out in trial. He came when he because they were in denial. They weren't going to say it. And my attorney said, "Hey, look, do I have to go get the records? I mean, I can prove that you're about to call a squad car." And the detective said, "Well, did I? One of those kind of things." And said, "Oh yeah, well, we might have called a squad car on you." Yeah, that was a scary tactic right there too, because as I told you, I played Little League football. I was coached by police officers. Never had anything like this happen to me. So I was also entrusting the police because I was coached by police officers. So this was something different for me. And when he called the squad car, it was a very scary tactic. And plus with them denying me access into my own house and everything. So.
And the thing that seemed to be different this time is, like you said, new eyes were looking at it. And Steve, this really goes to the 6-month investigation. Is that what you spent doing the story? 2-part story, 6-month investigation, mainly about the closer, the investigator named Barbara Simon. Tell us a little bit about, did she have this this aura? Like everybody in the whole police department's like, oh, she closes cases. She closes cases.
Yeah, I mean, and that was what was different with this latest interrogation, because what Mark would later learn is he was going to face Barbara Simon, who was known as the closer because she had this knack for obtaining confessions and getting witnesses to speak. But the reason she had that knack was because she would hold suspects and witnesses for hours and hours in small, cramped rooms without as much as a warrant, wouldn't let them make phone calls, couldn't have an attorney present. And, eventually, if you didn't speak and you were a suspect, you would be put in jail. And the jails at that time were infested with vermin. Was not a great place to be. And a lot of these guys were in their teens, 16, 17 years old. And, eventually when you're put in a situation like that for 24 hours, you're going to break. And that's exactly what happened for a lot of these people.
I feel like the general public is finally starting to realize that, false confessions do happen because of this environment that's in there. In the situation, some of the tactics. And I don't know how much you can say, Mark, because I know you have a lawsuit going on, but was it just one of those things where, I want to go home. I've been here. How long were you interrogated for, if you can answer that?
It's unbearable. I did want to go home.
Like you said, you were dirty and you were tired. You worked all day.
Yeah, I was working at the plant, so I was tired, dirty.
You had a migraine?
I had a migraine, headache. I mean, everything was just going wrong. And then I come home and they show up on the porch. So I was terrified at that point.
Yeah, in this case, this is the part that Mark can't really talk about right now because of the pending lawsuit. But what it says in the lawsuit and the affidavits is that Mark was confined to this small room, was asked to call an attorney, to call his family, and he was denied. He was, left in this room by himself for hours and hours and hours. And when he didn't speak, they eventually put him in a jail, which was, as has been the case, infested with vermin. And it was, the next morning that Barbara Simon said, and this is what she did with a lot of the people, is she said, I have this evidence that she didn't actually have that's going to inevitably lead to you being convicted of first-degree murder. But if you agree to say this, we'll let you out of jail and you can fight this. And she just...
You trusted her.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. What Steve forgot to say, too, is that, and part of that, it was a polygraph test that was also given late at night, about 2:30 in the morning. And, I had shorts on, a tank top. They froze me out and everything else. So we took a polygraph test, and the polygraph technician told me I failed in the middle of the test. And I never knew that you can read it that fast, and I found out that you can't really read it that fast. So,
and they lied, too, saying
that
it
was a mind
admissible
game.
in court.
Yeah.
And you later took another polygraph, which you passed, correct?
I took two more polygraphs and passed.
Both of them?
Colors, yes.
Oh, my God. And how long, this is the other thing I find amazing is that, you had a pretty good lawyer. It's a lawyer we all know, Steve Fishman, correct?
That's correct.
That's a name people know, and yet it seemed like every step along the way with the prosecution, with the judge, they just didn't want to hear that this was a false confession.
That's correct. Steve did a great job, man. Last time I talked to Steve said, I got you numbers, man, and I got you low numbers. We started in as first-degree premeditated murder. That's a life sentence.
Yeah.
So he got me 5 to 15, which wasn't a satisfactory number for me because I thought they had no case. I was going home, but 5 to 15 was better than a life.
Well, I find you to be, don't take this the wrong way, very unlucky. You're a very unlucky person because Fishman did get Barbara Simon to admit that, I didn't really ask any follow-up questions like how many times did you shoot him, your friend, Cole. And the jury went back and said, hey, we want to look at some time cards they wanted to look at?
Yep.
And unfortunately, the time cards were destroyed.
That's right.
And they just said, well, because they're destroyed, you can't prove that you were actually working at Sam's Club when the murder happened. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's still, there was no other evidence that Sam's Club had? No cameras, no nothing?
No, nothing. You got to realize when they came and got me, it was when Fisher and Jackson came, it was 2 to 3 years after the initial statements that I gave. So time was going on. They had the sprinkler system malfunction and everything else. So the records was destroyed. You
must have been going crazy.
Yeah, I was. I knew I was at work. I knew I was, and locked in.
There were no other employees that would vouch, say, yeah, he was here, or they just couldn't remember because it was 3 years.
Yeah, and it was
4 years,
too much time that went past, and even my supervisor came in and gave my work schedule, and they said that he can't remember that. They asked him something like, "What did you do yesterday?" He said, "Well, so how can you remember 4 years ago?"
It just, I mean, the jury wanted the like a pay stub,
right,
to prove that you had worked 40 hours that week, and they couldn't even get that. That just surprises me because businesses keep records for 7 years because of the IRS that they wouldn't have any of that.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, and it was eventually telephone records that showed that Mark was working that day. And at Sam's Club, you're locked in, you can't leave. So he was making phone calls at the time that his friend was murdered, so he couldn't have done it.
But the judge didn't even like that evidence.
No, she didn't.
And nor did the prosecutor.
Who was the judge on this case, by the way?
Vera Massey Jones.
Okay.
So that's her proper name. That's not what they call her in the court world either.
What do they call her?
Vera Nasty Jones.
Well, one of the things that troubles me so much with this is certainly there are police who are eager to close cases. And one of the cases that Steve writes about in his investigation is that there was a suspect where the police said, doesn't matter whether you did it or not, the mayor wants me to get this case closed. So by the time we're done, you're going to have done it. And so there's lots of pressure on these investigators, which I understand, and I can account in some circumstances for people making genuine and honest mistakes. I think there's a pattern of conduct here with Ms. Simon where it's tough to buy that. And we should say Steve tried to get a hold of Simon and was not able to, and asked the city's law department, which has represented her in some legal actions, to say something. What did they tell you about her, Steve?
I mean, literally nothing. Normally I would get at least a response saying no comment, but there was no interest whatsoever.
So, okay.
You know, I mean, part of that issue is these, on average, the lawsuits involving Barbara Simon have cost $8.5 million per person. Oh. So, you know, this is a city that's self-insured, and they've made the decision that they would rather have innocent people in prison than spend that $8.5 million.
Doesn't money always win?
Apparently it does.
Well, so where I was going with this is if the police are in a rush, prosecutors should say we're not satisfied with the evidence. A judge should say don't bring this crap into my courtroom because it's not going to work. And at some point, hopefully a jury would say, boy, that was a pretty thin case. In every one of these cases, or at least the ones I read about that Steve wrote about, it seems like the entire system broke down, that it wasn't just the closer trying to stitch up some folks who she thought she could hang a case on. It were the people in the system who were supposed to provide us some safety against this rush to judgment happening. I
agree. If you look at my case, this guy was shot 4 times. The way that that statement read was the gun went off 1 time, and he was killed.
It was after a fight.
After a fight, yeah. Too. There was the thing said it was an argument that turned into a fight. He pulls a gun. We struggled for the gun, and the gun went off.
But the physical evidence kind of shows that it's either, correct me if I'm wrong, either like an execution style or a quick ambush, which it seemed more execution, 4 shots.
From what my lawyer said, that he was laid down and shot. Somebody stood over him, shot him.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. That's an execution style. And the thing about it is, just like you just said, ML, this guy was shot 4 times, and my statement said he was shot once. I mean, judge, prosecutor, everybody's seen that. Seen that. So why don't you say something's wrong here?
Well, that's what's terrifying to me. That's the sort of thing that if you put those 2 things side by side, for me, I'd say next, this ain't the guy. Go back to work.
Right.
Well, once again, she never asked you how many times you shot her for the confession, which is just, that's just bad detective work.
The type of gun that was used, where the shooting occurred.
Where is she? So she was a Barbara Simon homicide detective for 20 years, which This is another question that might go down the road. Are they going to relook at every case she worked in those 20 years? But what happened after she retired for 20 years? She went to work for the AG. Any misconduct there that you know of,
Yeah,
Steve?
not that we were able to find, but not that it was easy to determine. I didn't find any lawsuits or anything like that. Mike Cox hired her as an attorney general, as a investigator for the attorney general's office, and she ended up retiring about a year or two ago under Dana Nessel. So she continued after. Oh wow! After people knew what she had done, she continued to work in law enforcement.
Now, I don't think the Attorney General brings very many homicide cases, if any, but certainly Cox probably would have known her from his time as a Wayne County prosecutor. I guess there's something about her that they liked. Mark, one of the things that I bet a lot of our listeners are thinking about, and I've never had a chance to ask somebody this before, but you're in very uncomfortable circumstances. They're doing everything they can to coerce you, to break you down. And they ask you to sign a confession. I think there are people out there who would say to themselves, you know what, I would sit in any kind of cell for a day, 2 days, a week, whatever, to avoid signing something that could put me in prison for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. What was it that made you say, you know what, getting out of where I'm at right now is better than facing a prison sentence?
Well, she told me if I signed it, I can go home and fight it. It doesn't seem like I was a good guy. It doesn't seem like I did it, stuff like that. I can go home and fight this outside world. And one thing that we didn't cover is that, I was still in my probationary period at Chrysler. So I had to get back to the job.
You want to get to work the next day, 5 a.m., right?
And they knew it. Yep. Yeah. At 5 a.m., they knew it because I said it. Look, at least let me call a lawyer. Let me go home. Or I got to go to work tomorrow. So
that's the other thing. No lawyer. I mean, any idiot like myself that watches, Law and Order, any kind of true crime thing knows that, and maybe that's exaggerated, but you ask for a lawyer, that's the end of it. You got to have a lawyer. And did you ask for a lawyer?
Many times.
And she just ignored it?
Yes.
So it sounds like she said, and correct me if I'm wrong, look, I wrote up this confession. You know you didn't do it. I know you didn't do it. You signed this. It's bullshit. You can kick this in court because it's so obviously not true. And you sign it, or did she say, we both know you did it, but maybe you can beat it because it's, I don't understand her pitch,
Yeah, I don't think because of the pending lawsuit that Mark should get into exactly that part. But I can tell you from the affidavit and from the lawsuit, and from the other people who are still in prison and the other people who have been exonerated, the whole deal was she employs a thing called a read technique, and the idea is to intimidate and scare suspects. So, and you keep them in a room for a long time. You get them until they're emotionally distraught. And then the idea is, then you say, we have this evidence that they don't have, and you're inevitably going to get convicted. So, I know you didn't do this. Well, when I say I know you didn't do this, it's I know you wouldn't commit first-degree murder. There was a fight. And, you didn't mean to do it, but the gun went off. And that was what happened with other people who have been exonerated, is they claim that this was a second-degree murder. You didn't plan on doing it. You got into a fight. I mean, there was one man who, I think it's Lamar Monson, right? He was accused of bludgeoning, just killing a teenager. Yeah, 12-year-old girl. And Barbara Simon had him say that they had got into an argument and that he accidentally killed her. And we later found out that all the evidence that they had was wrong. They ended up getting fingerprints that showed that he wasn't actually the person who did it. And then the actual murderer's girlfriend said that when he went home that day, he was covered in blood. And he didn't like how the 12-year-old was talking to him, so he killed her. And he, to this day, remains free.
Oh, my God.
Well, this is what's so so terrifying. I mean, the read technique, and one of the more interesting parts of Steve's investigation, and it's all very interesting for what it's worth, is about the read technique, which was something developed by a Chicago police detective back in the 50s that's all about breaking somebody down. And it sounds an awful lot like brainwashing when you read about it, and that there are now states and there are some agencies that will not allow their officers to use the read technique, and there are consultants who no longer do training seminars enforcing or advocating for the read technique. But I find it just, I have not been in a situation, I think we've all been cold and uncomfortable, but I've never been in a situation where I feel like I would sign away several years of my future just to get out of where I'm at that moment, which leaves me feeling like it must just be a terrible, terrible state of mind that they put you in, where they're like, I'll do anything just so I can go home.
Yeah, it's hopeless. You have a hopeless feeling. You know, I mean, I just had a baby. I had a 5-year-old and an infant. You know, a wife, business, everything else like that. Was on my way up, doing good. Just got a job that probably would sustain us for the rest of our life. And all I seen is they're taking it away from me at that point in time.
How many years did you serve before you were paroled?
7.5.
So I want to go back to that, Mark. Once you sign that piece of paper and they say, okay, beat it, what are your thoughts when you get home? What's the first thing you do?
He doesn't get home.
I don't get home.
Oh, right.
She lied to him.
She when you signed the paperwork, they took me upstairs. That was it.
Were you like, wait a second, you said I could go home?
I said all that. My
would
dad,
they laugh at you? Or?
Yep. My dad called that night, and they wouldn't even let him talk to me. So the next morning when he called, they said, well, he's not going anywhere. He's just committed. He just signed paperwork saying that he committed first-degree murder.
And what did you feel then?
I felt duped. I felt like I was used. I felt like...
Were you mad at yourself?
Yeah.
But now you understand that it's, this happened to a lot of other people. Which how many people so far, Steve, have been exonerated, or at least they're investigating it to clear because of Barbara Simon?
There's 4 people who have been exonerated, and there was a 5th one who was in jail ready to go to trial before DNA evidence showed that he didn't do it. After Mark's case became known, the floodgates opened for more people who had Barbara Simon. And Mark could probably speak to this, but he was getting phone calls after phone calls after phone calls from people in prison who said the exact same thing happened to me. And I interviewed a lot of them. And they told me the exact same story. They were, in this one case, there was a guy who was 16 years old, and his mother and his sister, who was also a minor, were taken to the police department. They were separated. The mom wasn't allowed to talk to her son. And he ended up so afraid that he ended up falsely confessing. And the mother was never allowed to talk to him. At no point did they have an arrest warrant. There was no video of the interrogation. It was just the police department's word against theirs. And people at the time, and before Central Park 5 case, just could not understand why somebody would admit to a crime that they didn't do. But when you're told, we have solid evidence that will inevitably convict you, but there is a way out, and that way out is to say it was an accident or it was self-defense, what
almost
are
like pleading down to another crime.
Yeah. And you know what Steve is not telling you? The police officer know that self-defense charge is the hardest charge to fight. Yeah, I mean, so she put you in a real position that it's a non-win situation over there too, because you really got to have somebody there that says you didn't do it. Self-defense is very hard to fight. That's why the University of Michigan Innocent Clinic don't take self-defense cases.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Wow.
So 7.5 years in prison. I can't imagine you were positive that you were ever going to win this after everything you've been through. So what's the mentality like, just the survival mentality of 7.5 years?
Well, you're right. It was a survival mentality because I still wanted to get home to my family. As I told you before, I had numbers. I had 5 to 15, so I know at the maximum I was doing 15, at the minimum I was doing 5. The survival method was, spiritually, I had to pick myself up spiritually, and physically, I had to pick up myself physically because it's a challenge in there. All these movies you see about prison is pretty much true. It's a fight for the fittest and everything else like that. I wrote everybody, man. I wrote wrongfully convicted, Wisconsin, New York. Barry Shuck and everything else. I seen Barry at one of the innocent seminars, and I thanked him. I said, "Thank you, Barry." He said, "For what?" I said, "Because you turned down my case." He said, "What was your case about?" I told him. He said, "I think I remember that." Then he said, "So what did you end up doing?" And David Moran was behind me. I said, "He took it." He said, "Oh, well, you were in great hands."
Yeah, so I'm thanking you for
turning
turning it down.
that's why I'm thanking you for turning it down, right? So it was. I wrote everybody, man, until the University of Michigan Innocent Clinic put something in My Care, which is a prison populated a magazine that said that they're starting something new. Because everybody else was going on DNA. If you didn't have DNA, you were screwed. Mm-hmm. So they said, we're going on the merits of the case. And I was one of the first guys to put my application in. I was in that first group that they took. I was the last one that got exonerated out of the 5 people that had.
And you were exonerated in 2022.
That's correct.
Convicted in 2002.
Right.
So, you missed a lot of years there, but you're paroled. Right. What was it like getting out, being, paroled and just reacclimating?
Well, you're paroled. You still have no rights because you can't vote, you can't get a job or nothing because you got that on your record. Totally. Good. The only thing I had good that was going for me is David Moran said, "I'm not going to leave you alone. We're gonna win this case no matter how long it takes me." Well, so awesome. They took my case, and while I was home. I can't say anything other than praise for the University of Michigan Innocent Clinic, man. All the people that they're freeing and getting free and taking their time, and the students. I had about 28 students since my stint, because every semester you get 2 new students.
Right.
And they worked their butt off. They were, even though I told attorneys about the phone records, none of them ever got them. They went and got them.
Wow.
So what was it in the end that turned the tide with all this evidence that didn't look good enough to convict you, that did convict you? What did they find that was able to finally persuade people that you weren't the guy?
We got a judge that wasn't a Vera Massey Jones. This judge, Shannon Walker, she had Lamar Monson's case, who was before me, who had Barbara Simon also. So the same thing she seen with Lamar Monson case, she seen in my case.
She's a pattern.
Yeah, so it was a pattern. And that's what she said in her findings. It's a pattern, it's a scheme, it's a scam, and that's why my ruling came out. I test the credibility of Barbara Simon. Mm-hmm. And that's why, as Steve just told you, I get calls 3 times, 4 times a week from prisoners.
Do you like that, or does it exhaust you? Like, oh, another one? Or are you like, no, I got somebody help me?
You know what? I tell them you're preaching to the choir because I know how it is in prison.
I can relate. Yeah,
and I know it's exhausting, but I enjoy it because they suffering the same way I suffered. I was blessed. I had family support. A lot of them guys in there don't have family support. You got to look at it. At this point, they're going through their second go-round of the court process. The first go-round was
a nightmare.
Yeah, it was a nightmare, and it broke them. So they don't have any money to do this. So the innocent clinic or the clinic is the only thing they can look to get their case heard and finally get exonerated. And if they turn them down, then where do they go from there? They got to try to find some freedom. So Shannon Walker took the case, and she looked at it, and she seen it was BS. And so she said I was eligible for a retrial or reopen my case. The prosecutor didn't want to go for that, so she took it to the appellate court. Well, we won in appellate court 3-0, 3 judges to nothing. So they didn't want to accept that, so they took it to the Supreme Court. Bridget McCormick had to recuse herself because she was my lawyer with David Moran when I first got to the clinic. So she had to recuse herself because she was my lawyer. We had 5-1. One guy said he just want oral argument. The rest of them said we don't even want to hear it because, it has no merit.
So why isn't anybody going after Barbara Simon? Well, I mean, it seems like if someone did something under false pretenses, it would be the police.
She committed a crime.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the interesting thing. I thought when the story
Possibly.
came out, the prosecutor's office, the police department, and a judge would say, there's solid evidence there are a lot of people still in jail based on what the Metro Times found. The Detroit police commissioners are calling for an extensive investigation of all the cases handled by Barbara Simon. The Detroit Police Department said, we're not going to do it. That's up to the Conviction Integrity Unit of the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. I've been trying to get a hold of the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office for the past few days and haven't been able to get any explanation about what, if anything, they're doing about it. So, this has happened in other cities, Chicago, New York, where they had a corrupt detective and they decided to take a look at those cases. And a lot of exonerations came out of it. I mean, this happened at the peak of the corruption in the Detroit Police Department in the 90s and early 2000s when the Justice Department said there are extensive problems, especially in the homicide division. But what nobody ever decided to do is say, well, let's take a look at those cases in the 90s and early 2000s and see if there were people who were wrongfully convicted during that time. And that's a huge problem. No one in the entire justice system is doing anything about this.
Do you think it's because they don't want to, or because they're short-staffed, or what would your guess be?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, all of it would be speculation, but I mean, I can tell you that the city of Detroit doesn't want this to happen. There's $8.5 million in tax dollars that they'd have to spend on average. The Wayne County prosecutor got pretty close to Barbara Simon at the time. I don't know if she's still close with Barbara Simon or not, but you had that relationship. What I think needs to happen is a judge needs to appoint a special counsel to look at these cases, because clearly no one is interested in looking at this. There are severe ramifications, at least financially, and it really damages the credibility of a police department and prosecutor's office when it's discovered that under their watch there are innocent human beings put in prison.
You got to look at it too, man. You know how many lives you affected doing that? And you're saying just because you're short of people to investigate the charges that we don't care anymore. You not only destroying the person's life that is in prison, his family's life. The other side, the guy the family who think they got the right person, you destroyed their life because the real killer's still walking the street.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you, because, like we said, Cole was a friend of yours. He has a family, I assume,
right?
That he had a big family. He's murdered in 1997. When you got out, or after you were exonerated, did you have any communication with any friends or families of his, and what was their opinion? I mean, I would think maybe some of them just thought you did it.
Yeah. Cole's family was fighting this before I came into the picture. Cole's dad and them, they were on TV quite a bit. Actually, he was talking about the Detroit Police Department, why they haven't solved that case. So he was a thorn in their side at that point in time. So they was in a rush.
So there's more pressure on them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They were in a rush to go get whoever it was, because he was on TV more than 3 to 4 to 5 times back then. So he never thought that doing a relationship between me and him, it was me, but he said, you got the killer. So when he said it, my lawyer told me the best thing to do is to stay away from the family.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's what all lawyers tell you about.
But still zero contact with any intermediaries?
Yeah. I saw one of his closest friends while I was out, and he looked at me. He said, well, I heard that they finally turned it over. I said, yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Well, there's a legal saying about the fruit of the poison tree, and based on Steve's reporting, it looks like there's a poisoned tree in the Detroit Police Homicide Department, and they should probably be looking at some of the fruit that fell from that tree, because there may be a lot of people like Mark who are still locked up who shouldn't be, and there may be a lot of people who are free who should be locked up who actually did the crimes. I mean, this is just a nightmare for everybody. So first of all, Detroit police don't have enough resources. Now you're asking them to reinvestigate cases, to investigate their own. It's going to undermine confidence in the Detroit Police Department. It's going to undermine confidence in the prosecutor's office. It's going to lead to lawsuits where when you've admitted you've done something wrong, it's going to make it really easy for the people who have been wronged to get a large 6-figure or more settlement from the city. There's really no incentive whatsoever for the people who need to clean this mess up to clean it up.
Well, one of the things
it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
and
but
that's the problem.
One of the things that would help that
people don't do things the right way.
Is more
anymore.
More media pressure. And the reporting, Steve, is really good. I mean, it's long. Nobody reads anymore, but it's a long article. It's really well written. We'll obviously link it, Metro Times. But it's still just the Metro Times. I know the news had picked up on it very little. Have you ever reached out to like Dateline or 2020 or send them this story?
Maybe a top national podcast, a news commentary.
but honestly, that's more,
why we're on.
That's more big media pressure that might force them to do, like ML says, the right thing. Have you heard any contact from them?
Yeah, no, I haven't, and it's a good idea. I mean, it is why I did reach out to ML because if there is no pressure from the public to investigate this, clearly the moral responsibility is not enough. Sure. So they need pressure. And if this doesn't go any further, I'm assuming they just want the case to die.
Guys, I had 30 guys call me from prison, begging for help or affidavits from me so I can help them out because they had a crooked cop on their case. And as I told you, my case is about crooked cops. So,
but when you get a call from prison and somebody says it was a crooked cop, I mean, is there still a part of you that might not believe them?
Yeah. Until you hear the story and everything else like that. Yeah. But an innocent man, he cries out for help. Guilty man don't. So you're not calling me to tell me that that you want my help. And don't think that I'm going to.
Yeah, you're actually you're not just grousing in a common area.
Right. So, 30 people, man. So, I mean, if that's not enough to move you, I don't know what it is. And that's a small
honestly,
part
it should be one person should be enough.
You're right.
5.
You're right.
Yeah, but you would think so. I mean, this was one of the most heartbreaking stories I've ever had to report because I'm skeptical by nature. And when somebody says, from prison, I didn't commit murder. I'm yeah, right. Sure. Mm-hmm. I need to see some evidence. All of the people that I talked to, I was absolutely convinced that they were not given a fair shake. There were witnesses that said Barbara Simon threatened to frame them for a crime if they didn't incriminate these people. There are affidavits coming out later from people saying, there's this one party store owner, and he said he didn't see who shot a gun outside of his store, and Barbara Simon said, "Hey, it looks like you have a criminal record. I'll come after you unless you say it's this guy." And there's an affidavit from this guy saying this isn't it, but that person is still in prison. And there are multiple people who are still in prison with very, very strong evidence that they didn't do it. There's no way that in today's world that a jury would put these people away with the evidence that's there. But if you don't have judges who are willing to do it, who are willing to look at it, if you don't have prosecutors who are willing to look at it, and if you don't have a police department that's willing to investigate it, these people will die in prison.
I was introduced to Steve by a childhood friend, Adolph Mongo. And when I first met Steve told me, he said, "Man, before I met you, I was one of those guys, all right, put them in jail and lock them up for life if they did the crime." And then he started hearing the story. And then he started hearing more and more people's story. And his heart softened a little bit. I'm not saying Steve is soft, but his heart softened a little bit because, these horror stories that you hear are true stories, and they gotta hit to the heart. And I don't understand why it don't hit to the heart of the prosecutor, the judges, and everybody else who let this stuff go on.
How do you seem? You seem so well adjusted. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's a hard thing. I feel like I'd be enraged forever.
Well, I am.
You don't come across that way.
I am. I'm doing what I'm doing. I found God when I was in there, and God softened my heart, but He put me on a mission, and this is my mission right here. You asked me, do I get tired of the calls and everything else like that? you know, the University of Michigan Innocent Clinic was my call, and it gave me a little peace because these guys in prison, man, if you answer the phone for them, talk to them, send them letters, send them money, that's all they want to be home, but that's a great deal for them, like it was a great deal for me. So somebody's got to reach out and try to help these guys at another level, and these guys are not getting help. So the thing that got me right now is I'm on the outside talking about it, and those guys are on the inside. So I have a peace of mind that I'm on the outside talking about it.
Well, nobody wants to hear from prisoners.
No,
period.
nobody
They
want to
don't.
hear from prisoners. Period. And you know, like I said, I'm blessed. My dad's 90, turned 91 the other day. I got all my kids are grown and doing well, and you know, I'm just blessed.
Well, here's what should scare the shit out of everybody listening to Mark, both Marks, is flimsy case, one of the best criminal defense attorneys in town. Judge didn't see it. Jury didn't see it. I mean, based on everything you've told me, Barbara Simon could have done her worst. And if I was on that jury, I wouldn't have voted to convict. Right. But 11 people did. Or is it 12? What was it?
12, I
think. 12?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a different time. You know, I think it was a very different time. This was before people understood that false confessions were really easy to obtain. I think when the Central Park case came out, the Central Park 5, people started to realize that this is a real problem. But I think back then people were more likely to trust the police, and they didn't understand why somebody would say they committed a crime when they didn't.
And you know, they questioned my jury, one of the articles that I had. I don't know if it was Scott Lewis or something, but they said they had a difficult time convicting me. You know, like you said, they asked for some more records, employment records and everything. Couldn't get that. Vera Massey Jones said that she needed a decision in this, and they would have to get back to the drawing board and figure something out. And then,
so
a couple hours later, they came back.
There's one thing that we should probably note here, because I do think with the Central Park 5, there was a lot of racism in that case. But in this case, if you're watching us on, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you watch, Mark is black.
What, he is?
Barbara Simon, the police investigator, was black. Vera Massey Jones, a black woman. This is, you know, race does play a role in a lot of wrongful convictions. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to pretend that that is not a factor that everybody going into court has to be worried about. But in this case, it was a straight up the system failed at every level. The prosecutor, Kim Worthy, is black. This was just a miscarriage of justice straight up.
Yeah.
I call it black on black crime. That's exactly what it was. I mean, and if you look at everybody that Steve interviewed, they're black. You know, so that, I mean, I couldn't call it nothing but black on black crime, because you're right, ML, she's black.
Yeah, and there is actually a racial component, and that's the jury at the time. In Wayne County, there was this guy named Jessie Johnson. He was later exonerated, but when there were some witnesses that Barbara Simon were interviewing, and she was holding them for a very long time. They were high at the time. She got them to incriminate Jessie Johnson and Kendrick Scott for a murder they didn't commit by threatening to charge them with murder. And she was sitting down with Jessie Johnson, and according to Jessie Johnson, she looked at him and said, "There ain't no jury in America that won't convict a black man of killing a white woman on Mother's Day," because that's what the shooting was. This was a white woman shot on Mother's Day, and she called him a stupid N-word, and you know, this is the kind of heavy. So there is a racial component, and that is the jury. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the system was predominantly black, going after young black men.
Yeah. So I'm not saying. I guess what I'm saying is, while racism exists, it doesn't look like there were some crackers who were out to get Mark.
Right.
That's right.
But if you've spent any time paying attention to jurisprudence in America over the last 250 years, there are lots of crackers out to get black defendants. So let's not pretend the problem isn't there. But in this case, I think it's worth noting that didn't seem to be a factor, and it's a terrifying case. Mark, I'm glad you're out. I'm glad you are helping others. I'm glad you and your family seem to be strong. And Steve, we appreciate you as usual in the Metro Times bringing some stories to light that people won't find other places. I mean, the Free Press and the News have written about some of these exoneration cases. I know we've done some when I was at Fox too, but you've gone deep and you've put together not just some examples of someone who was done wrong, but you seem to have exposed someone who was doing the wrong. And that's kind of a landmark investigation in my case. And I wish Ms. Simon would speak for herself. I wish the city lawyers who represent her would have said something about that. But if she'd like to say something, or if they'd like to say something, we're inviting them to come on this show anytime and lay their side of this case on the table, because I think it's worth taking a really, really close look at.
I appreciate you, Elric. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, gents.
Thanks.
Check out all of Steve's great work at metrotimes.com, and we'll have a link to his stories on our website, which is mlsoulofdetroit.com. Hey, hundreds of listeners have seen Dr. Yaldo to enjoy the lifetime benefits of the best custom LASIK in the world and the stunning near and far vision provided by bifocal lens replacements. His patients continually swear that these procedures give them the best vision of their lives. These are as safe, fast, and painless as any medical procedure of any kind. And I've had LASIK done, and so has Mark, and it's changed our life for the better. No more glasses, no more contacts. You can see yourself naked in the shower. Okay, maybe that's not such a good thing for us, but for you beautiful people out there, why not? Enjoy yourself. It's why millions of American ever-growing numbers opt for them every year. All you need to do is throw away the glasses, the contacts, the readers, and all the costs and hassles that come with them. Go to YaldoEyeCenter.com and schedule a free consultation and tell Dr. Y you're there because of Mr. ML. Not really. Not even a
Mr.
doctor
E.
of education. Yeah, no. No, I am a mystery. No one really understands.
For God's sake.
It's a mystery. But you know it's not a mystery? Where you can go to figure out some really complicated issues like, how should I set my money aside for the future? Because maybe you're a big-time city official who can travel on the people's dime, and maybe you're a political contributor who gets hooked up with government contracts. Well, good for you. But that's bad for the rest of us. Now, if you're not among the swells lining your pockets with taxpayers' money, if you're someone who actually works for a living, call Luke Nowacki. Call financial specialist Luke Nowacki. I don't want to take anything away from Luke. He is a financial specialist. You can call him at 248-663-4748. He'll discuss strategies to grow your assets, from annuities to individual retirement accounts to college savings. Make that call now. You've got kids and kleptocrats to feed. That's Luke Nowacki, 248-663-4748. Because when you call Luke, he'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc. Member FINRA SIPC.
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent.
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc.
And if you want to flex your muscles, or maybe just eat a whole bunch of them, maybe we recommend the pride of the East Side, the Caju Cafe, which is back with the show. People come up to me all the time like, I'll see you at the Caju. I'll see you at the Caju. I'll see you. Well, you will. I was just there on Saturday, had a great time. It's a great place to go if you're looking for good food. Kitchen's open late. If you're looking for great music. In fact, when I was there on Saturday, they had a band outside in the beer garden and a band inside. Now, that is something you don't find everywhere. And Monday...
Like a festival.
Well, it was, every night it's a festival there. A festival of fun. No? Okay, John's going to be like, okay, dude, you kind of went a little too far with the festival of fun. That would be the proprietor.
He liked it.
John Rutherford, a virtuoso musician in his own right. On Monday, it's Muscle Madness. Wednesdays is karaoke. Thursdays, this is coming up Thursday, Annie Mac. Friday, Killer Diller and the Dirty Notion. Saturday, Not Tonight, which is what I usually hear on Saturday, but, Sometimes people throw a little pity your way. And on Sunday, it's the Z-Fest 2024. That's all at the Caju Cafe. Take a look at their schedule. Check out their menu at cajucafe.com, and we'll have a link to their website on our website, which is mlsoulofdetroit.com.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
Those of you watching us on Patreon, which you can do for as little as $5 a month, when you also get the show before anybody else and you don't have to listen to all those annoying insertion ads, you have probably noticed that Mark brazenly is wearing his Michigan Wolverine T-shirt. I think a lot of you are expecting
I have
me.
like 30 of them, so come on.
They're stained.
My whole wardrobe.
Not by sweat, by ignominy, which is a word that a lot of people at Michigan are proud they can pronounce properly. A lot of people, I think, were expecting me to name Michigan my Geek of the Week because there's more revelations
there's not.
about what a despicable, low-down, dirty program there. But I'm going to throw you a curveball.
Really? Oh, it was going to be Mel Tucker for his lawsuit?
We've talked a lot about Mel Tucker. And I was thinking about this last week. You said something about, you never pick on me. Have you read my columns in the Free Press about the Green Wall? Have you listened to our episodes on Mel Tucker? We have piled.
I didn't say that, did I?
There was something about that.
I think you just like to come after Michigan a lot.
There's a lot to come after. These guys are always doing. They just
we're national champions.
No, because you have an athletic director who not only condones all kinds of improper behavior, but doesn't seem to be able to stop it.
Condones it.
His own car was stolen by a player, and he didn't do anything about it. Come on,
stolen?
That's borrowed and
borrowed.
And she wasn't one of his players. It was Jeff Jones, right? Not Xavier Simpson.
I don't know. I don't know I don't know who Jeff Jones is.
I think that's the name Xavier Simpson gave the police.
Oh, is it really?
He crashed the stolen car into a light pole. But anyways, we're not going to.
Kids.
We'll, you know what? There's going to be plenty of shade to throw on Michigan later because there are more revelations coming. Trust me, folks.
National champions.
Tainted. Anyway.
Yeah, sure.
And this week in Room 76, we will do Tainted Championship by Soft Cell. No, we're not going to do that. But my Geek of the Week is quite simply a man named Ricky Alderetti who went to a Little League facility and cut off a statue of Jackie Robinson, cut him off at the feet. Not to make a political statement, not because he had something against baseball or against the man who broke the color barrier and became a civil rights hero, because he wanted to melt the bronze down so he could go get some more fentanyl because he was tweaking. He was caught and he was sentenced to 15 years in prison, not just for stealing the statue, but for many other crimes that he was found to be guilty of. And,
do you think he would have been caught if it wasn't Jackie Robinson and say maybe it was, I don't know, Jebediah Springfield or something? Like
if he cut down Stonewall Jackson or something?
Yeah.
I don't know. I
don't know if he'd be caught.
I guess it depends who's the attorney general. Is it Trump or is it Biden? But he in an amazing moment, he thanked police and prosecutors for catching him because he said, "If you guys didn't get me, the drugs would have." So, despite that momentary flash of grace, Ricky Alderetti, you are my Geek of the Week.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
Mark, you just reminded me, if I really wanted to take a dig at the University of Michigan in room 7609, I would have played the Cult.
Good one.
No? Okay.
Why, do they have a song called National Champions?
Firewoman? How about Fire AD? Maybe that is a cover they could do.
If you want to fire them, go ahead.
Well, they fired the hockey
manual.
coach, the basketball coach, the assistant soccer coach. They run out of people to fire. But if you want to see the city from a vantage point that is beautiful and not at all tainted by, wait a minute, I think Mike might be a Wolverine. I better be careful with this. Make sure to take advantage of the summer and book your tour on Detroit's favorite party bike, the Michigan Peddler. 15 people can enjoy 2 hours touring and pedaling through Corktown, Midtown, and downtown, stopping for pictures and perhaps a beverage or two. Michigan Peddler offers the longest tours in Detroit, seat backs for your comfort, and the friendliest staff to make your experience one to remember. Be sure to book your tour now at MichiganPeddler.com. That's Michigan, PEDALER.com. As an exclusive to our listeners, you can get a promo code MLSOUL, that's MLSOUL. If you enter that in the promo code area when you check out, you will receive $40 off the price of one of their 15 passenger party bike tours. So that's the Michigan Peddler. Save $40 and support the show. One of the other ways you can support the show is by making a nomination for Room 7609. And that's exactly what Donald did when he suggested that we play Mr. Kitty After Dark, which
Never heard of this.
Mr. Kitty.
Yeah, not the
But he
greatest
says
band
it
name.
has a very new wave 80s feel. So let's check it out. Mr. Kitty After Dark.
I see you, you see me. How pleasant this feeling. In moments you hold me. I missed you. I'm sorry for giving what I have to show you. Growing the ashes for slowly. It's your voice consoles me as the hours pass. I'll let you know that I need to ask if how it feels to rest on your patient lips. You eternal bliss. I'm so glad to know as the hours pass. I'll let you know that I need to ask if how it feels to rest on your patient lips. You eternal bliss. I'm so glad to know. I'm sweating to drawings in motion, feeling like patience, controlling the question. I won't think when telling the stories. My laughter knows me when leaving, when talking. Your closer, it's calling. As the hours pass, I will let you know that I need to ask how it feels to rest on your patient lips. You eternal bliss. I'm so glad to know. As the hours pass, I will let you know that I need to ask how it feels to rest on your patient lips. You eternal bliss. I'm so glad to know.
The night will hold us close and the stars will guide us home. I've been waiting for this moment. We're finally alone. I turn to ask the question. So anxious, my thoughts. Your lips were soft like winter. In your passion, I was lost.
As the hours pass, I will let you know that I need to ask how it feels to rest on your patient lips. You eternal bliss. I'm so glad to know. As the hours pass, I will let you know that I need to ask how it feels to rest on your patient lips. You eternal bliss. I'm so glad to know. As the hours pass, I will let you know that I need to ask how it feels to rest on your patient lips. You eternal bliss. I'm so glad to know. As the hours pass, I will let you know that I need to ask how it feels to rest on your patient lips. You eternal bliss. I'm so glad to know.
Donald says, Yo, ML and crew. A couple weeks ago, I was pumped to hear Alex's suggestion of MGMT Electric Feel. Great addition to Room 7609. I, too, have been hesitant on suggesting a more modern song. I'd like to make request for Room 7609, Mr. Kitty After Dark. This song is from 2014, but feels to be plucked from the 80s. Hope the tune finds its way to you. Keep up the good work, fellas. Donald from Wisconsin. Well, it definitely has kind of a dark wave feel to it. It's got.
Did you like it? That seems right up your alley.
It was
bad.
it was a little more trancy than I like.
Okay.
It's something I might put on as background music. Like sometimes when I'm writing a really long and complicated piece, I will play Royce Cop, and I'll just, because it's catchy, but it's not, and most people just know it from the Geico commercial with the cavemen where he's going on the moving sidewalk and sees So Easy Caveman and gets all bummed out. They have a lot of really, really good music, and they partner with a lot of interesting artists. But I find it to be kind of engaging but innocuous, and I would say the same goes for Mr. Kitty. But I could see this playing at a club somewhere. It feels more like you'd see people dancing to it with a pacifier in your mouth, though.
Well, it's really funny when you learn about a group or a band, and you realize that, wow, this is a lot more popular because she's had 215 million views on that YouTube. Just YouTube alone. I don't know what his Spotify does, but that's a ton of people.
He doesn't need us. If we don't like him, he's not worried about it. 215 other people are digging the hell out of it.
He might need us.
215 million.
He might need us because I just learned about him, and then I also learned that he was canceled 4 years ago.
Dear.
Apparently for sending nude photos, sex videos. He would have been 27, I believe, to a 15-year-old. So, yeah, he admitted it online and everything. In his label's like, okay, we're done with you, and all your proceeds are going to go to your estranged husband. It's kind of weird.
Wow. So
yeah, that's Mr. Kitty.
Well, his name is Mr. Kitty, not Mr. Kiddie. But
hey, you can separate the art from the artist.
I'm pretty sure Donald was not aware of any of this when he suggested Mr. Kitty, and nor was I till Mr. Fellhauer.
Sorry,
just informed me. But
it's the first thing on his Wikipedia page.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Well, don't do that stuff.
Well, anyways, the music speaks for itself. Although, if Mr. Kitty invites you out after dark, you may want to make sure your parents know, so they can come get you, or maybe drop an air tag on you so they know what's going on. As you can tell, we'll play just about anything in room 7609 now, so please send your suggestion. But of course, what we want is a story. It can be a short story like Donald, where he talks about how this kind of reminds him of another era, or maybe it can be how the music connects to you, or a funny story that you have, or an interesting story, or even a poignant story.
And where do I send that to?
Oh, you can send that to mlsoulofdetroit@gmail.com. But I don't want a story about a dog dying. We're doing a dog dying. No, okay, no Casey Kasem fans out there. Casey Kasem, by the way, Wayne State University grad.
Bloop!
Back when he was Kamal Kasem. Does anybody else remember those commercials where he'd go, Wayne State, great school? They used to put them on the
only you
radio all
remember.
the time. Oh, really? That's a shame because they were really, really good stuff. So old Casey Kasem bits aren't the only things I play. I play lots of sports. And when I'm looking for a great league that's run well, where I'm going to meet good people and have a good time, I go to Come Play Detroit, because there are lots of people who play games, and that's just not really anything you want to do. You want somebody who helps you get in the game. Come Play Detroit is my choice for softball and volleyball, but they offer a wide range of sports, from pickleball to kickball to sand volleyball and more, and they play all year round, offering everything from one-day tournaments to seasons that last 8 to 10 weeks. You can sign up as an individual, as a part of a small group, or as a full team. Either way, go to ComePlayDetroit.com, where the friendly staff will help you find the right fit. And you know I like a good deal. If you go to ComePlayDetroit.com and use promo code SOUL, that's SOUL. When you sign up, you get 10% off your first registration. It's a great way to get in the game and to support the show. Another great way to support the show is by joining the Soul Patrol and becoming a partner with us, really becoming an intrinsic and inherent and important part of the show. By making a small contribution for as little as $5 a month, you get to watch the show. You get the show before anybody else does. You can avoid all the annoying insertion ads that bring us a little bit of dough, enough that we keep doing them. So I'm going to apologize for that. But if we had some more Patreon members, maybe we'd get rid of that. This week, Brian Robillard joins us as a Patreon member, a member of the Soul Patrol. You may remember Brian from last week's episode. He's the guitar player for the Common Scolds. He talked about Lollapalooza, where he and other bands comprised of lawyers raised more than $15,000 for a charity they're trying to fight a vicious disease. This is at least their third time doing this at the Magic Bag, and we hope they keep up. But we also appreciate him supporting this show. And you can also support us by making a one-time donation at mlsoulofdetroit.com. You can donate by PayPal or by Venmo, which is what Dennis did. It was a very generous donation. And if I seem a little torn, it's because of the message Dennis sent along as well.
Uh-oh.
Great show. Shawn, you did an outstanding job of keeping ML in check for the first half of the show. Mark, I'm not a Patreon member, so I didn't see it, but I can imagine ML's face when you barked, "Are you done?" And all he could muster was, "I thought my name was on the show." ML, your long-winded answers to everything for some reason is endearing. LOL.
It is?
LOL. I don't know how to take that. Lastly, Shawn and ML, you lost your mind after Room 7609.
Yes,
Maybe it was
I
the
agree.
song.
I agree.
But Van Halen, not Van Hagar, was awesome.
Amen. I like this guy.
For the entertainment, gentlemen. So, Dennis, thank you for the support. And I'll try and be brief. We also have a Patreon member of the Soul Patrol, a new member of the Soul Patrol, newly minted. Jim O'Donnell says, regarding Eddie Van Halen, Mark, I agree 100%.
All right.
ML and SP Windsor, you're out of your element.
I can't believe you could like those other guitarists and not like Eddie Van Halen. That just blows my mind.
I didn't say I didn't like Eddie Van Halen. I'm just saying I'm not a huge fan and do not care for the band in particular.
Sounds like you're rewriting history a little bit.
Go back last week and listen, folks, and let us know. A little bit of feedback. Hey, this is from Evan. Hey, Mark, ML, have you heard about this new podcast? I'm sure you know the case. No one knows. It's a deep dive into the case of Joanne Matouk Romaine, a real-time investigation uncovering the truth and cover-up of 55-year-old mom of three who went missing after attending prayer service, as Mark says, on the east side in Grosse Pointe Farms. It would be 70 days later and 30 miles away in Canadian waters where Joan would be found with no water in her lungs.
There's a really good Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix about it.
And Scott Lewis, who's been on the show before, who, if you heard a mention of him earlier, former investigative reporter at Fox 2 and at Channel 7, has done a lot of cases like this. It was involved with Mark Craighead, who was our guest today, and has done a lot. He did some investigating on this, and I think he talked about it in the episode where he came on with us. But, it's a very, very interesting case. I didn't realize her body was found 30 miles away in Canadian waters. Is that right?
Yeah. I think the surprising thing was how long it took for her body to surface.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. I thought they just found her right there in Lake St. Clair. Okay. Wow. Anyways.
Which is why there's some thought of, she didn't just fall in the water there. I don't know. It's a wild case. I tend to lean towards accident, but.
Well, there's.
There's a lot of questions.
There's certainly a lot to sink your teeth into there. So if you'd like to check that out, Evan, it sounds like highly recommends it.
I want to listen to it.
And we have some feedback by Lauren, who's commenting on a story I broke last week about the Reverend Kenneth Flowers, who is a very prominent pastor in Detroit, both involved in politics, interdenominational matters, trying to bring people from different faiths together. By all accounts, a towering figure in the Detroit ecumenical community, has roots out in L.A., really sort of transcends both the city and his pulpit. A major figure, was arrested and charged with criminal sexual conduct, is accused of having improper relations with a minor, a 17-year-old man or young man who lives down the street. I broke that story, and Lauren says, are you familiar with the term down low brother? It's when married straight men fool around with men behind their female significant other's back. It's why HIV and AIDS rates are astronomical in cities like Detroit, Atlanta, etc. Well, I don't know about any of those rates, but yes, I have heard of a down low brother, and I guess the accusation here is that perhaps Reverend Flowers was or is a down low brother. Reverend Flowers told me he denies all the charges. So that one will be decided in our courts of law. I will tell you, something extraordinary happened after that story was published. I expected to hear from a lot of parishioners, from a lot of people who care and love Dr. Flowers coming after me. This happens from time to time. I got one email. I got two emails. One of them was from a parishioner who said, "Thank you for telling this story. I'm praying for my pastor." And I thought, you know what? That's a pretty righteous individual. So that says something about Reverend Flowers' flock if this was a legit email, and I have no reason to believe that it's not. So some kind words for a difficult story. And believe me, if anybody thinks a reporter likes writing a story about a prominent person in a very delicate legal situation, you're crazy. But it happens, and it's our job, and we have to do it. So there you go. Shawn is not with us. He is now. You said he's Lions-related duty, Mark.
Yes.
How is he in East Rutherford, New Jersey, with the Detroit Lions?
So the Lions play Thursday, first preseason game.
Well, of course, a lot of us major Lions fans are looking forward to.
Oh, you're the worst.
I'm
excited for it. I'm going to watch it. It's good to have football back.
Is it the Jets or the Giants?
It's the Giants, and they do before
New York Football Giants.
Yes, and before the game on Thursday, they have combined practices before the preseason game.
Oh, right.
So that's why they're there as long as they're there for it. Because I think the practice today and tomorrow are together. Okay. You know, where you get to finally hit somebody else who's not on your team.
Yeah.
And then the preseason game Thursday night. So he's stuck out there for a while.
Okay. Well, Shawn is not with us. He will be back next week. But in the meantime, I have to compliment and acknowledge the success of Shawn's Moonlight gig, the Carlos and Shawn podcast, which, according to Chartable, last week hit number 73 in the sports charts in Switzerland.
Oh. I was saying, I wonder what was the topic? Were they covering something in the Olympics that's Swiss-related?
I have no idea, but if ever there was a country that screamed Shawn Windsor, it's Switzerland.
Yeah.
Just neutral.
Neutral about everything.
Although they're
a lot of fence sitting.
You'd think with all the clocks he might be a little more prompt, but who am I to say?
Yeah, the glass house.
We once again are hitting the charts, so we appreciate your support. Please like and rate the show where you can. Share the show. We really appreciate that. Let our sponsors know that you know about them because of us. That's just say, hey, ML or Mark sent me. And you can find links to their websites on our websites. And we really appreciate you being here. Check out Steve Nieveling's investigations in the Metro Times. We'll have links to those on our website, too. And next week, boy, I don't know what we got planned, but I think we're going to be dropping another bonus episode for those of you who are Patreon subscribers. So that's coming up. And, I don't know. What do you think, Mark? Was it going to be good to have Shawn back? Or
Yeah, I miss him. I miss his sunny face.
I will tell you that I have avoided every potato bar that I've come across since he dropped that little
about his roommate's romance with the potato.
The tuber.
There's just so much more to mine in that guy's head.
It's just you gotta. It's like fracking. You know, you really have got to drill deep to get the
oil,
minerals. But when it gets there, boy, oh boy, that's some heavy fuel. So, Mark, thanks for putting the show together once again.
Sure.
And Steve and
they were great.
Mark Craighead, fascinating conversation. I expect we'll hear more from them. But we look forward to seeing you again next week on The Soul of Detroit. Until then, Cyrus, take us.
Can you dig that? Can you dig it?
And Jim Harbaugh out. No.
Can you dig it?
This was The Soul of Detroit.